Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and with the support of Astound Commerce. Modern commerce is complex and leaders need to look beyond web and marketing tech to understand the complete customer experience. The Astound Commerce Maturity Assessment lets you self-evaluate the state of your business against modern commerce demands. Visit astoundcommerce.com/maturity. On this episode, I welcome back to the podcast the one and only Kevin Graff, president of Graff Retail. For decades, a key advisor, sales trainer, and mentor to senior-level retailers and their in-store teams, Kevin and I talk about optimizing the sales floor experience before and during the COVID crisis when all seems to have changed, but in fact the fundamentals are even more important to achieving sales success. Next, another longtime friend and colleague, Andrew Siegwart, president of Blue Mountain Village Association, is back to update us on the state of the retail tourism business and share key lessons in transforming a customer-driven organization through the pandemic and beyond with a passion and commitment to a learning and caring culture. First, let's check in with Kevin, live from Oakville. Kevin, welcome to the Voice of Retail, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well, especially here with you. You don't even know that you're one of my idols. You know?
Well, listen, the year has been odd for a whole number of reasons, but in my mind, it's been so odd because we weren't together at store. You're on the stage, I'm on the stage. You did such an amazing job. The year has felt, weird for a bunch of reasons. It feels incomplete not having see you do your work and get together with you as part of store. But it is great to be able to chat with you and connect via this, the next best thing. So listen, why don't we jump right in? I know you very well, but for the listeners at home who may not know about you, tell us about yourself, your professional background. And this is your second time on the podcast. And again, for those who maybe didn't hear the first one, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Graff Retail.
Yeah, well, when I'm not, being in awe of you and your podcast and the little company that I run, I started, as you know, a very long time ago before some of your listeners were born. Back in '88, I started this company with the idea being, let's help, retail staff become more successful. So retailers hire us to, train their sales staff, how to sell more, how to get their managers to manage their teams, their district managers. And that really hasn't changed over the years. The way we do our business has changed, but for the most part, that's kind of what we do here. And for some reason, after 30 plus years, I think we're even more passionate about doing it now than we've ever been, which is really great, especially given all the circumstances of the retail world out there.
I want to take you back to the before time, so pre-COVID.
Oh,
and if you remember, conferences, remember those? Coffee meetings, remember those?
I'm gonna have to go on Google and find some images to see what that was like.
Talk about heading into 2020. So 2019, you and I have chatted before. We were chatting in late 2019. Talk about the associate training strategies in this before time, pre-COVID. Now we can get nostalgic about how great retail was before COVID came along, but it was tough. I mean, it was still in transition, and it still is today, amplified or accelerated. But just to start the conversation, I found it good to kind of anchor it in how you were thinking about training objectives, and were they changing, or what was the same for 2020 and beyond? And then we'll get to, okay, now what if nothing else, if everything else has changed for the COVID era? So take us back to 2019 as you looked ahead 2020, 2021, and beyond.
Yeah, and good for you to say let's not be too nostalgic about it, because it wasn't all, sunshine and rainbows back then. Mm-hmm. And so, the focus that we had with our clients, and we just respond to our clients and what their needs were really kind of like twofold. Most people were, seeing decreases in traffic counts coming into their stores. Right? Mm-hmm. Like traffic counts were off for an awful lot of retailers out there. And so, look, it's the old thing. If traffic's going to go down, the only way you're going to maintain or grow your sales, well, you're going to have to boost your conversion rate, sell to more of the customers that are coming into your store, or you're going to have to get a few more dollars out of every customer that's making a purchase, your average sale. I mean, it's straight line math in there. And so the focus of the training was to really, from a staffing perspective, but even from an overall retail strategy perspective, was, okay, let's work to get to more of those customers, become more effective at uncovering needs, closing sales, and gets a little bit more money out of everybody. And the second part that everybody was trying to respond to is that consumer expectations kept going up and up and up and up and up
Right.
Because
right.
customers are getting everything they want the way they want, right? So online's flourishing. The amount of international competition is amazing. Our homegrown retailers just keep getting better. You can get same day delivery, of things. So if your consumers' expectations are going to go up, that lands squarely on the shoulders of the frontline staff. So needless to say, now their performance had to rise as well. And
right on.
We were in this situation nostalgically of going, okay, traffic counts are down and customers are expecting a heck of a lot more from everybody. Oh, wait a minute. Boy, oh boy, if you're going to have a brick and mortar store, your staff better be good.
Well, and it takes me back to the before time, talking to retailers who were saying, the incremental margin return on that dollar to drive traffic wasn't as efficient as the dollar invested in my staff. And they were turning their minds to that more and more. And we still had many retailers who weren't even measuring store traffic, let alone being able to do the conversion rates. So I think all retailers had aligned to the fact that store traffic's tough to come by. Not impossible. Nobody had given up. But that conversion and the basket size things were just such key drivers. And then it's funny you talk about, I'm going to say friction, the frictionless buying experience, right, that we've come to expect. It's funny in the COVID year, it's all friction, right? It's the friction buying experience. Like there's nothing but friction.
Absolutely.
Except finding a parking spot maybe in the mall or near the store. There's a little less friction there. But let's talk about one or two key strategies that, if you could summarize, again, still in the before time, one or two key tips you were communicating to retailers to make sure that their sales team was performing their best and doing those conversions. Then again, we'll jump into the COVID era.
Yeah. So, the thing that everybody was chasing to get their staff to perform better was going infinitely deeper on getting them to become better brand ambassadors. Okay, so what do we mean? What do I mean by that? Okay, you break it out into a couple of different chunks. People were doing a way better job of going, you guys need to know about what you're talking about. You better learn a lot more about our products. And then coupling that with, okay, well, you better learn how to engage with the customers when they're coming into the store to be able to, uncover their needs so that you can put these two things together, right? And so it was the combination of those areas. And you see that play out. Like you take a look at some of the retailers that should be dead on the side of the road, but they're not, like Best Buy, who's just hitting it out of the park, right? And they've been doing really well. Like they should not be around if you believe everything about what's going on with online, and a SKU is a SKU, and you can buy everything in their store based on a SKU, and you can scan it with the Amazon app, right? When you walk into the store, and right from your phone, you can get it delivered. You don't have to buy it in the store. Yet they continue to grow. Well, what's their strategy? Their strategy was to go, wait a minute, we recognize that our staff are the greatest differentiator that we've got. So why don't we invest heavily in our staff and the staff experience, and that'll translate into an improved customer experience, which translates into improved sales. And they've proven that case over and over again.
It's funny how they went down that journey. I was on my Food Professor podcast talking about tipping in restaurants, and it made me think of Future Shop versus Best Buy, right? Where you had the two formats running concurrently, and materially the biggest difference was commission salespeople, and that they went, away from commission salespeople, and as you said, invested in the skill and the knowledge of the associates to just be that brand, as you described, brand ambassadors. So listen, 30 years, at the frontline training, you pretty much saw everything, but I don't think you saw what was coming with COVID. I don't think any of this did. I mean, I was shopping myself, and of course we're all wearing masks, and I was thinking of you, the basic, look the customer in the eye. Where the hell else can you look at them now, right? Now all you can see is their eyes.
Right?
So, okay, tick, we got that. I think we got that accomplished. But all right, so we know it's focus on safety. I talked about it being friction, wipe your hands and then you go to the store. It's about friction. Don't touch anything. Don't experience the store. Keep your hands in your pockets. All focused on safety is now the new black. That's the baseline.
Oh, yeah.
As you think about all these things, what and how can associates still achieve that conversion objective? I mean, again, I was in this experience in Superette, which is this great new retail cannabis store, and they try to assess you off the top. How's your mood? What are you here for? Do you know what you're looking for? And it's so hard, right, to even get a sense of what people are thinking as they walked in with 3/4 of their face covered up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. Like, everybody likes to talk about the world's so completely changed in this new normal. But, when I unpack what it is staff need to do, and if I was to break it down between, okay, what are the things you were doing before that you need to continue to do versus things that you have to do differently, like the notion of you've got to get out there and you have to engage with your customer. That's not new. That's something you were supposed to be doing. Like, unless somebody told you that your first job was to wait after the customer, get off your butt and go and look after them, right? So you got to engage with your customers. You still, and this was the movement in retail with the people who got it. You're still supposed to be a solutions provider. It's not transactional, right? So that's still there, And the third thing is, well, we've been talking forever about, hey, go out there and create a great experience. Okay. None of that's changed out there. But what's a little bit different now, and you touched on it, you got to really work hard to build safety and trust with your customer base in there, right? Like, you've got a pretty highly sensitive, anxious customer base out in the stores, and it's dissipating. I'm watching people's behaviors in stores now, and from the height of the COVID situation where, everybody was being very careful not to go close to anybody, and everybody was sanitizing, and that's starting to dissipate and come down. But you still have to be able to build confidence with your customers that you're looking after their safety. They need to see you, working through your safety procedures. They need to see you, sanitizing your hands, being true to what your protocols are. So that's different.
It's a great point, because all that used to be, so to speak, and all that used to be in the background. Like, a lot of these things were happening. I was joking that grocery stores basically are so clean now you can perform surgery in them. They were clean before. Like, it's not like it went from unsanitary to sanitary, but now it's almost like a visual prop. I was in a grocery store, and the person was walking around in the middle of the day just cleaning up, and you're like, okay, so I know it happens, but now I really know it happens.
Right, and we're more sensitive to seeing it happen too, right? They've upped their game in that area, but we tend to do that. So that's one thing that's a little bit different. The other thing, and it's not different, but there's way more importance on it. You better make sure that you're giving that customer that's in your store everything that they need, because they do not want to have to make a second and a third trip back. So now the onus on you to really dig in and make sure that they've got everything. And, the classic example is, you're over at your local hardware store and you're, buying some paint and a brush and, a roller for your paint job. Well, if they don't make sure you walk out of there with everything, if you're like me, it's 3 trips back to the hardware store because I forgot the tape and the drop sheet and the little magic thing to help me cut the edge because I suck at painting. So I've got to use that thing. If I got to go back 3 times, that's a terrible experience, right? So they have to dig in harder on that. And I'll tell you, the other thing is, and there's no nice way to really say this, is that by and large, the shopping experience out there right now kind of stinks in the stores, in too many of the stores. Because you're going in with a mask and you have to line up and you can't touch anything and people aren't waiting on customers. And I'm like, no, hold on a second here. We actually have to double down and work harder to try to build connection with our customers, to be able to engage with them than ever before. Because what we're creating is this self-fulfilling prophecy. If we create this, or if we maintain or go down this slope of creating a less than ideal shopping experience, all we're doing is we're continuing to fulfill the prophecy of driving people online.
So it's just going to become a negative cycle, right? I went there once; it wasn't a great experience. Right. I'm not going back. Versus, a chance that everybody's trying hard. That vibe you get where they're both being safe, but it's saying, listen, how can I help you? So it's, that's probably one of the key things, right? Is keep it safe, but don't forget the basics, the fundamentals that you're so focused on teaching and conveying, right?
And it's not bad everywhere. right? It's just bad in too many places. There's phenomenal service stories, that I find out there. My office is in, downtown Oakville. So, it's a lot of independent merchants, some chain merchants down there. And, sometimes you walk into some of these stores and they get it. Like they're working, they've doubled down. They're working so hard on the experience side. They're following up with you. They're emailing you. They're keeping great customer notes on things. Like it's phenomenal, some of the stuff that they're doing. But then you kind of get out there and it breaks down.
Which was the story pre-COVID, right? Again, not to be thinking about the halcyon days of retail pre-COVID. It wasn't perfect then, but at least it was kind of going in the right direction. It's like this reset has it's another thing that needs to be trained. And speaking of which, coming up soon, speaking of training and volumes, is sooner than we realize, we're going to be in the middle of Black Friday, Cyber Monday holiday. And that's going to put, I imagine, a fair bit of stress. I know you and I, last time we talked, it was really focused about how to prepare your teams for peak. What are you thinking now? I mean, peak's going to be very different. Retailers all love lines in front of their store until now when, you can't get half the people in the store and lines will butt into each other. But have you started thinking about what and how to communicate training or, great experience during peak?
Yeah. And it's a good observation, right? Like who knows what this is going to be? It's this great uncertainty. Do we get a second wave? Are we, put more caps come back into place on occupancy loads inside of stores, and
even if it's today, like even if it's as good as today, it's still half the capacity. Like these are the good days, and
exactly. So you're seeing, the one little glimmer of hope that you're seeing out there is that for a lot of retailers, their conversion rates are up and up quite a bit because the customer that's coming in is really pre-qualified. Right, they're not coming in just to kick the tires. They've got a need. They're coming in. So we are seeing,
and the baskets are big, right? The baskets are big, epic-sized baskets. Absolutely. Retailers are telling me they've never seen basket sizes this big. I wish they could take credit for it.
Retailers get blamed when it doesn't work. When it's working, raise your hand and say, yes, it's because of me. I'll take the credit for it. Thank you.
Get it when you can. Get it what you can. Take it when you can. Yeah.
Right. But and it's interesting. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been involved in these discussions with different retailers about the holidays, and two themes keep coming up over and over again. The first one is urgency. Trying to impart and it's more of a management thing in a store to impart upon their staff this sense of urgency that goes, guys, limited window of time, limited number of customers. You've got to make sure you're maximizing the value of every footstep that's coming into your store. Right? It's not like before where you're going to have endless numbers of customers coming in. If somebody comes into your store, you've got to be at the top of your game and work with a greater sense of urgency to ensure that you're meeting their needs now. No more of this. If you need any help, I'll be right over here.
Right, because there's another customer right around the corner.
Yeah, it's like, no, that's your customer. Go and work with that customer, and let's do the very best we can to satisfy every single one of their needs. And that's the second point that's come up in these conversations is, hey, let's make sure at holiday season that you are selling to everybody possible that's on their list.
Right on.
Like all that is let's maximize the dollar value of that sale, but from a customer perspective, right? So it's like, you're in and you bought this one thing, but okay, well, let's determine what are all the other needs that you have on your list that I can help you with, right?
It's like a judo or a taekwondo move. In other words, the weakness becomes the strength, right? It's like, since you're here, you really don't want to go anywhere else, right? So what else can we get in your basket? Have you thought about, I was going to go, hey, now that you're here,
absolutely,
turning the weakness into the strength.
Well, and think about this as a customer, right? You just lined up to get into my store. Do you think you want to go line up to get in any more stores?
Yeah. How many more times do you want to line up? Why don't you just take care of it all here?
They always say, never let a good crisis go to waste. There's an opportunity that comes out of everything. Oh, okay, great, terrific. Conversion rates are up, average sales up, and your opportunity to create a greater sense of urgency with your customer to buy from you here today has gone up as well, right? So there are things that we can leverage and we can take advantage of. It's just that question now of, right, are we actually going to be able to execute it?
Yeah. Well, let's last question. Let's think or tell me your advice to the C-level executives, senior level retail executives listening, and frame it for me in a 2 starts and 1 stop. Start doing these 2 things, and stop doing this. And I'm thinking here in the framework here is the COVID era, because we're going to be in this for another 18 months, 24 months of one level, hopefully at this level.
Don't tell me that. Oh, you just ruined my whole sales plan. I got to go back and I got to revisit my sales plan. I thought this was over by the end of the year, Michael. What's going on? I didn't get that memo.
Yeah. I think you need a revision.
All right, so let me give it to you.
Cancel the trip to Miami, my friend.
Absolutely. I want to get this right for you. 2 starts, 1 stop. All right, here we go. Okay, so a massive thing that has to happen. If I'm a C-level executive, I've got to work really hard to rebuild and maintain trust with my actual team. And that's a really big thing, right? The teams need to trust that you've got their interest first and foremost, that you've got their back on keeping them and their families safe. They need to know that you're going to maintain your safety protocols throughout the busy holiday season. So the whole greed thing starts to kick in, and the need to make money, and you've got to work doubly hard to make sure you're not going to shortchange your safety protocols. The moment you do, your staff begin to lose trust with you. And because if we're dealing this within this COVID environment, that's still a really big issue for people out there. So next thing you know, you've run out of hand sanitizer in your store because it's been really busy, and a day went by and nobody did anything about it.
Right.
It doesn't sound like a big deal, but that's a very big deal for your staff out at the stores. So you've got to work really hard to maintain that trust. Second thing, if C-level execs don't see this now, I don't know when they're going to see this. They have to really, they've got to see the true value in what the staff bring to their brand. Right? The one thing that came out of this whole COVID thing is, the media got on this, which was, I'm not normally a big fan of the media, but they got on this thing, and the hero story started to show up, right? About, the heroes out on the front lines in the grocery stores and in the pharmacies, right? And people are beginning to recognize this, that it's the guys working behind the counter at the coffee shop that are out there every day serving you, right? Yeah. That's that brand experience. And so now from a C-level perspective, it's okay, recognize how important they are. Start to invest in these people, right? Give them the support that they need, right? So I don't care if it's on the remuneration side, the bonus side, or if it's on the training side, or just the work experience side, right? But start to look after these people, recognizing how important they are to your actual livelihood as an organization. Everybody likes to be able to invest in the bright, shiny lights, and that's great. I'm not going to say that you probably shouldn't, but every time people invest in their staff properly, the staff repay them over and over again. And my stop is that comes to mind is, and it's just, you're just going to hear my frustration. Because it's really tied to it's the opposite of what I basically just said to you. For years, too many C-level execs have just, quite frankly, just paid lip service to their staff in the stores. We've said the staff are important, but we never really treated them like they're important, right? We paid them as little as we could possibly pay them in too many cases. Did a average job of onboarding them, communication, work environment, work experiences, benefits, whatever it was, just a lot of talk and not necessarily enough action and enough different doors out there. And so my plea to retailers out there is, if you think you want to run a brick and mortar store, what is it that you think is going to differentiate you from the guy down the street? What is it that you think is going to actually create that great customer experience? Because it's not the product and it's not the price, right? The product and the price is just a mundane thing out there right now, right? Who's going to bring that alive? Who's going to bring all of your brand characteristics and values alive? It's your staff out in the stores. So stop paying lip service to the notion that staff are important. And if we could get people to do that, I'm a brick and mortar guy. I watch this stuff. I see who's winning. I see who's not winning out there. And it's not 100% true, but the people who are winning out there are really good to their people. They create really good work experiences for their staff. And you can't get a good customer experience if you're not going to create an amazing staff experience.
Well, Kevin, you've been insightful as always, generous with your time, again, as always, and such a treat to talk with you. How can people learn more about what you do? And you've got an app that you mentioned, and all about Kevin Graff Retail. How do they learn about Graff Retail?
Well, the easiest thing to do, everybody, like we're like everybody else, we got our little website out there, graffretail.com. Yep. Have a look. It's interesting. We transitioned most of our training to online back in 2008. So we've been on this online thing. We're moving almost everything to this app. But, the one thing that we created for retailers when we got into this mess is we hurry up and we created a training program for frontline staff on how to deal in this new COVID environment. How do you sell with a mask on? How do you rebuild safety and trust? And, the response to it's been really good.
Oh, that's great.
And let me tell you, we're just about to make that app available for free to people out there too.
Wow.
Yeah, I know free is my least favorite word in the world, but you know what? I am sick and tired of going into stores and seeing customers behaving badly. It breaks my heart when I read about it in the media, and I've seen it in 3 separate incidents in my neighborhood in the past week. And I'm like, listen, let's just give the staff the training they need so they know how to deal with those challenging customers when they come into the store. Right. And so that's kind of what we're doing. And it's our give back to the retail community.
Well, what a fantastic resource. So everyone be sure and visit the website and soon the app. Well, Kevin, thanks again for joining me on The Voice of Retail. As always, like I said, a treat to chat with you and great insights. And I wish you a safe and successful rest of the year.
Hey, Michael, you are a star at what you're doing. And I say that with all authenticity. What you're doing is so important for the retail community. So thank you very much.
Sylvain Charlebois studies food supply chains daily.
On va parler avec Sylvain Charlebois, spécialiste de l'industrie agroalimentaire.
Let's bring in Sylvain Charlebois.
And joining us now to talk food security is Professor Sylvain Charlebois.
Sylvain Charlebois is the Senior Director.
Now joined by Sylvain Charlebois.
Sylvain Charlebois is my guest.
This is Sylvain Charlebois, and with our new podcast, The Food Professor, along with my co-host, Michael LeBlanc from the Voice of Retail podcast, we'll dive into the recipe for the food, grocery, food service, and restaurant industries, discuss proprietary industry and consumer food-related research, check out fresh new ideas, and talk about whatever half-baked strategies are in the news this week.
So be sure and join Sylvain and I every 2 weeks for in-depth insights and great conversation. Find the Food Professor online and subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you enjoy your podcast today. Andrew, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I am well. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to hear your voice. I wish we were doing this in person, but the next best thing is chitting and chatting. You and I work together closely, Retail Council of Canada, a couple of great years working with you. I learned a lot, and you've been on the podcast before, so not your first episode. Well, why don't we start out? Let's jump right in. Let's start out, particularly for the folks who maybe didn't hear our first interview. Tell us about yourself, personal, professional journey, and your role at Blue Mountain Village Association.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. I've spent pretty much my entire career in the service sector, so primarily in either retail or hospitality. And, I've had a particular focus throughout my career in capacity building. So that's either been through, education, training, career awareness, conference event type engagements, or association work and advocacy. And of late, my work has shifted to include some social entrepreneurship. So building on what I've done in the service sector to help charitable organizations and foundations. So I'm managing a local foundation here in the South Georgian Bay region, and I've just created a new not-for-profit serving the LGBTQ community sort of north of Bloor Street. And of course, I spent almost 15 years at Retail Council of Canada and a lot of operational And now I am the president of the Blue Mountain Village Association, which is an organization that serves all of the stakeholders of the Blue Mountain Village destination. So we do everything from economic development to advocacy work to training and experience provision, etc.
Describe for those listening, maybe not so familiar with Blue Mountain, maybe those outside of Ontario or even Canada, what is Blue Mountain, and give us a bit of an overview of that, just to set the context for our conversation.
Absolutely. We are, we're considered an alpine village. Many people are probably familiar, particularly in the retail sector, with Whistler or Mont Tremblant. Whistler being, of course, the destination for a very large industry trade show annually. But yeah, we are an alpine village destination. So we are a collection of hotels, experiential attractions on mountains, skiing, golf, etc., aquatic centers. We have a village of over 50 restaurants, retail stores, and we create an environment, and we have a public ecosystem where people can enjoy nature, can enjoy performances, and the experience of strolling in a village that's modeled after some of the best in Europe, and also designed to really give that cultural sense of a small town Ontario experience. So a very unique destination that operates 4 seasons long and has a place for people to come and enjoy time with their friends and families, whether summer, winter, spring, or fall. And all of those experiences are there as part of it.
And you're a mix of people who are residents and have that either permanently or vacation, and tourists. So that's where I wanted to. I really wanted to dive into your expertise. We know, and we talked in our first episode about this deep connection between tourism and retail, and of course, some of that has certainly been fractured in the COVID era. You know, our border is closed with America. We're not seeing the Chinese consumer. We talked a lot about that in our last episode. Mm-hmm. Give me your take at a high level around tourism and the state of tourism. I sense, and I'm doing myself, I just got back from the Niagara wine region, touring inside Canada. So there's certainly some tourism there. There was actually many people in Niagara from Quebec because, of course, they can't go east. They can only come west. So it was great to see some fellow Canadians experiencing different parts. Is that what you're experiencing? I mean, what's your perspective? Obviously, we would be aware that tourism is not having a good year in the practice, in that kind of sense. But give us your sense overall of the impact of the COVID crisis and perhaps some of that intercountry experience that you're experiencing.
Yeah, so definitely the tourism market in Canada very quickly became a domestic market, and even more in the early days, hyper local. So airlines and any sort of business that's sort of connected to international travel outside of our borders has been very hard hit. And I think we will see the implications of that for years to come as they sort of ramp back and as the global travel patterns reemerge. With that backdrop, at the domestic market and at the hyperlocal market, certainly in the early days of COVID-19 shutdown and the quarantine, people were staying very close to home. But what we all discovered and know and were reminded of shortly after is that the bottom line is people need to connect, and people do need to be together. And no matter what kind of comes before us as a society and as a culture, those needs are there. I mean, good evidence of that would be how quickly businesses migrated to Zoom or online video conferencing as opposed to just a conference call. I mean, we all had conference call models we could have deployed, but it wasn't until folks found those online platforms where you could see each other and connect in a way that's reminiscent of how we normally did. Those were the tools that sort of really were entrenched, in our business sense. So, it kind of gives you a clue into what we as a culture need and want. And certainly in destinations that are fortunate enough to be considered hyper-local, where we are close to a very large population. So if you think of Niagara, if you think of Prince Edward County, if you think of the Muskoka region, the South Georgian Bay, Blue Mountain Village area, I mean, we are so close to the largest market in Canada. We had a real opportunity as destinations to be that place where people, when they felt comfortable and safe to do so, that they could have an experience with their family close to home. And so we've seen that focus return, as we entered summer and as we entered phase 2, following public health and the government guidelines. We really saw the consumer respond to that hyperlocal travel experience. I mean, obviously things have changed in every sense of what that experience looked like, but that need to spend time together, to get away and to connect, is inherent. And I think that's the silver lining for tourism operators and destination operators, is that there is that need and demand. It's just, how do we change what we used to offer to ensure that we can deliver safety, and that we can adapt our operations in order to meet their new needs and the needs of public health overall.
I want to get back to that point about how you adapted in later in the summer, but I want to start talking about when the COVID crisis first started hitting in what probably was your shoulder season. I mean, you're actually starting to wrap up.
It was the week before March break, so it couldn't have been worse.
Oh, right.
That would be like closing on the Thursday before Black Friday.
Oh no! Well, so take me back to those days. What did you and the team and the community think, and how did you get through those early first couple of weeks, or I guess it stretched out to be a month or longer, right?
I mean, immediate focus and attention was safety and security and protecting the team. So making sure that we were as safe as possible, and that we complying with all of the regulations and guidelines that were coming forward. And quite frankly, deciphering them, because they came fast and furious, and with not a lot of warning or coordination. I mean, I feel for national brands who had to look at a national framework, provincial frameworks, upper tier, lower tier municipal frameworks. I mean, it was hard enough in one upper tier municipality, never mind the broader picture. So that was, just getting the lay of the land and syncing up with our local health authority and getting all the information we needed was really the first step. And then, like a lot of shopping centers, our community and our assets were pretty diverse in terms of the stakeholders involved. Like you said, we have part-time residents and full-time residents as part of our economic model. So just making sure that we could adapt our security approach so that we could protect a large community that was no longer here. So, crime is always, what do we say in the organized crime networks? It's always man driven and opportunistic. So we knew right away that we had to make sure that we were securing our environment. And then always looking for the weak points, right? Always probing, always looking for weak points. Yeah. And and it was interesting. So we had a shutdown, we took care of business. We made sure we did what we needed to do to secure, and then of course take care of our team members and wrap up any programming. And then, the first thing you see when things are quiet down is the sort of strange cars and strange places starting to scout. You have to really be on top of that. But, one of the other things that we did right away that was really important was a quick sync up with all the different economic players and partners in the region to find out what other acute needs there were and how we could help. So let me give you an example. So just before March break, every operator in tourism is fully staffed and ready to go. And of course, there were layoffs and a lot of people some were actually stranded. People here from outside of the country who were stranded, and some are still here living in staff housing until such time as they can go home. But at that very same time, we had our local agricultural sector who were not getting the labor that they normally have come into the country as a result of the shutdown. So part of what we did as a community-based organization was sync up with those players to find out, are there opportunities? So we were actually able to connect laid off service sector workers with the ag sector, who was looking to recruit folks to prepare for the growing season. There was a real food security scare there. So we were able to do some stuff like that. So it was a lot of a lot of tying up loose ends, making sure security was in place, and then quickly connecting with the community and finding where help was needed. A lot of our operators had food that was pre-ordered for a March break period, so we were able to make donations to some of the service agencies who were quickly spooling up to help people in crisis as well. So that's where we started, was getting the lay of the land and then helping where we could and making sure there was safety.
So take me through to present day. You're running programs. We're in phase 3, and for those listeners, phase 3 is kind of, you're open. Your restaurants are open to probably 50% capacity inside, and retail stores are open in some way. What ways have you changed your standard programming? And where I'm kind of getting to this in general is, as the retailers in your community benefit from all the programming you do to bring people there, keep them entertained, and create kind of the value of the experience. How is that intersection gone?
It all had to change. Everything we do has changed, but the beauty is that the skill sets that we had and the culture that leads the organization allowed us to pivot and adapt. So I'll give you a few examples. We knew right away that we wanted to maintain relationships with our customer base, and we knew that all the points I raised earlier about people wanting to travel and spend time and connect. We knew that our customers were at home, working from home, managing their families, managing their children, etc., trying to make it all work. So we actually invested in a program of online festivals, events, content for kids, content for families, and took our show online. And so we normally would be programming in a physical space, and we took all that, worked with local artists who were no longer able to perform in a public venue, and we started offering online content. We did a concert with Fred Penner. He's a really great iconic Canadian singer for kids, and we had over 25,000 people view that concert, and our audience was global.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
It was really successful. And so in those early days, we started by maintaining relationships and staying connected to our core customer. And what we got from that was a lot of positive interaction, goodwill, and people saying, thank you for doing this. Thanks for thinking of us. And thanks for giving us something that we could actually use at this time, as opposed to, just trying to market to us to come back. Right. So that was something we did in the early days to sort of maintain the relationships and set us up. We really had to reimagine what placemaking is. So, or in the shopping center context, we had to reimagine what traffic flow would look like and how people would come back. So that was really taking a look at everything from how do we manage traffic flow of guests, and everyone has seen markings and two-way traffic and things like that. But what we added to that by we knew we would have pinch points in terms of traffic as we reopened, because we only have so much physical space. We had some guidelines that public health required in terms of number of people we could have, even in an outdoor environment. So we sort of converted some of our traditional spaces into new experiences for visitors, and it ended up being seating for people who are coming to buy small takeaway food items. So before, we had a lot of grab and go food businesses, and we had no seating for them. Well, now if you come and you are a grab and go customer, you're getting some of the premium experiences, because you're getting a great seating area outdoor. You're getting shade from the sun and the rain, and we're programming it with entertainment. So we've taken something that was a problem before and contributing to sort of traffic congestion, and we've actually looked at that, trying to be customer focused and realize these are customers who were actually having a bad experience before. If we create something new for them, we'll manage our traffic, and we'll actually maybe cultivate this market and create a new experience. We really changed how we did that. And then another thing we did was we looked at how can we take our teams that used to do things like host events and run an information services center and orient them toward managing safety and traffic flow. So we ended up, taking more than a dozen individuals, creating new roles for them. And we created this sort of super team that liaises with our parking team, with folks right in the pedestrian zones, linked to attractions, and all kind of driven by a team of ambassadors, and their job isn't to just provide customer service. Their job is to be constantly moving, interacting, identifying safety issues, identifying behaviors that are not what would be considered appropriate by the government or the health authority. And we're actually playing a role in helping people to be as safe as possible and engaging with people. So it's sort of like our public safety team. And, that has actually allowed us to get the support of public health, to be able to manage issues before they become problems, and to ultimately serve people and make people feel very comfortable. So, in a way, it is still performance. It is still providing an experience like a concert or a show, but it's a performance with a different objective, which is about maintaining safety and serving people. It's been a really interesting experience. And what we've actually found by linking all these teams together is that we now have regular data sets to compare and assess right in the moment to make changes. So there was a time when we last season, never mind last year, when we weren't doing that. So in some respects, our operation is more attuned to the guest needs and data than it was before. So little things like that have helped us to be ready for when the guests came back. And as such, we're operating at probably around a 60% capacity across the resort.
I imagine you could probably have more people go, but you've got your priority is safety and the overall guest experience, right? So you've got to be mindful of how many people can properly fit, right?
Exactly. So and you have to, exactly. And it's in the stores, in the restaurants, on attractions, just in the general destination. And what's great is that because we have all these tools set up where we can connect with visitors and get their feedback and respond to it quickly. It's not just based on our gut anymore. It's based on numbers provided by public health. It's based on sales data, but it's also based on when customers tell us that they're comfortable or uncomfortable. So what we've been able to do is create a system and a team that can throttle up or down based on those inputs as quickly as possible. And I think not to get ahead of myself when we start to talk a little bit about best practices, but I think that's something that we will carry forward as an operating system for whatever we do in the future. And I think that that to me is becoming the new norm, and having teams that are responsive and adaptable, as opposed to maybe depth of knowledge and expertise in any one discipline. It's more about how we work and how we mobilize than it is the skills we bring to the table. So I think that's something that we learned through this, and it's helping all of our members remain in business and adapt. So we haven't had business closures in the village environment. Our partners have been doing well, and I see stores across the country where whether it's curbside or suddenly doing hand deliveries, and that's a unique thing that probably wouldn't have been part of such a relatively small community. Are we seeing some of those innovations? You described the grab and go now as grab and stay, but exactly. Grab and hang out. Yeah.
Grab and don't go. But I'd imagine the retailer is similar. I mean, as I listen to you, I kind of reflect on a couple of things. One is, I was talking to the CEO of some brands, and they said, listen, safety is the new black. Like being safe is not just the foundation of the brand, because I'm sure that was part of your brand to begin with. You're running a resort where there's a lot of people. Safety is not an ancillary consideration to begin with, but now it's a little more integrated as that's the baseline. Everyone can do the baseline, but how do you take it to the next level? So that's where I wanted to talk about. You mentioned it before. How to what are the best practices and what is advice to retailers, because you're dealing with people in sometimes I think stressful situations, and people are now wearing masks, so it's kind of hard to read people. I was talking to one retailer. The old advice. Look people in the eye. Where the heck else can you look at them now? But it's a little hard to read people now, right? Like that's a new new skill set, a new muscle that has to be developed. So I was really curious to get your, some of your insights and lessons to the retailers about how to just manage these people, all of whom are looking for expectations and an experience. Tell me about that.
For sure, I'd be happy to. The first thing that comes to mind for me is this concept of making sure that we are being driven by empathy versus reactivity. And I think that's a conversation that we're all having internally and daily. And that is, because every one of us has experienced something very extraordinary. And as a result, everyone's tensions and stress levels are high. Everyone is, as you said earlier, working twice as hard for a 50% return based on capacities and a whole bunch of other things. So that inherently drives a lot of stress and anxiety. And I think what I've observed and what a lot of our businesses that I've seen locally is that we're dealing in an environment where reactivity is everywhere, whether that's customers, whether that's suppliers, whether that's staff members, whether that's, franchisors or franchisees, whether that's independent owners. There's a higher degree of reactivity, and it's easy to fall into that. So the best practices that I've seen are those businesses that are leading with empathy first and coaching with empathy first. And I can see the difference when that's at play. So to me, that's sort of like job number one. Using digital to enable guests, I think is exactly one of those best practices, which I'm seeing happen very, very well. And the beauty is it's not really that innovative. QR codes to look at menus has been around for, ages. But we're seeing a lot of businesses leverage that as a very simple tool. And
it's having a second life, isn't it? QR codes are kind of a bit of a laughing stock.
I know. It became like, a QR code, and then all of a sudden they're everywhere. But what's underneath it links to your point about safety. Is guests feel empowered, visitors feel empowered, and they feel safe, and they have control. So in this era of reactivity, in this era of uncertainty, when you can have control and make something easy that enables you to order food or to buy something, it takes that. So I've seen that happen in a number of fronts very, very well. One thing that I've seen, particularly in main streets across in the South Georgian Bay area, is I've seen very creative retailers turn their storefronts into web pages. Huh. So, you go to a store, you're walking on Main Street and you look, and I've seen these windows, they've been designed to look like the homepage of a website. I've seen product features, I've seen descriptions, I've seen phone numbers where you can call, some have QR code. I've seen some stores where the staff member is working, the guest-facing individual is working right on the street, walking people through what they're seeing on the webpage and how to order. And I think that is very interesting. I've seen some small restaurants do that as well. And I think it's an interesting fusion of those two worlds. I mentioned,
which is funny, right? I mean, in your time at Retail Council in the 15 years, the emphasis to get people across that threshold was everything, right? And it's such a turn of the business model to really deal with people in a very different way.
Yeah, and we are fighting against. We as marketers are fighting against careers worth of indoctrination, which is sell in more and more people. So for people who are getting it right, I have to take my hats off to them, because they've had to learn really quickly how to change their thinking. It's not easy, but it's cool to see the creative ideas that people are coming up with. I think I mentioned this a few times, but partnerships, creative partnerships to cover gaps. I'm seeing that as a best practice emerging. We have a member that operates a spa and a retail store, and they were trying to find ways to cover the shortfall of bookings, because obviously there's only so many booking capacity. So they redefined an outdoor space, created a cabana-like experience, partnered with a local restaurant, and started selling reservations for this elevated outdoor experience that's adjacent to spa services and shopping. And suddenly it's a new business line and a new revenue tool, and more importantly, a way to give people an experience that's safe, being done with a low investment and connecting with partners that are in the neighborhood. So those partnerships, I think, are really interesting. The other one that I've seen in the retail context that's been very very effective is just leveraging social media as a sales as more of a sales channel. And I've seen a lot of that with a lot of the apparel boutiques are doing sort of flash announced sales on Instagram and other social channels. And, it's like, 40 minutes, 40% off, Sunday at noon. Go. They're literally clearing out their merchandise.
Well, it's so interesting because your retailers in your community represent this hyper local community because you service a relatively small geographic community, but still doing those kind of hyper local things to drive excitement, and that never goes away in retail. It's just we're trying to figure out how to do it differently, right?
Or how can you take that and scale it up to a small chain or a national chain? But there's something about that sense of being kind of in the know. And I don't know, people more than ever are attached to their phones. I think it's another one of the negatives of this whole thing is this sort of phone addiction is not improved. It's gotten worse. However, with that said, a lot of eyeballs on these social channels, so it's a great opportunity. So when I see very, very small businesses nailing it in terms of sales growth there, that tells me that larger firms can really leverage that. And the bottom line is that's where the customer base is. So yeah. Well,
smaller, large retailers. I mean, I loved our conversation because you kind of from a different context, given that kind of idea, we're all here to serve customers, create great customer experiences. You guys have been doing it for decades, and under your leadership had taken it to a new level. Now you've got a whole other challenge. You've got a challenge or opportunity ahead. Your biggest season is coming up. The winter season as a 4-season resort, but a lot happens over the winter. So listen, congratulations on everything you do. It's a tremendous effort. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned by whether it's restaurant, food service, and retail as well. So listen, where can people go find more about Blue Mountain Village and perhaps if they're in the area might want to spend some time there? Where can they learn more about you and Blue Mountain Village? Yeah,
bluemountainvillage.ca is our website, and you can find everything you need to know about what to do here, where to shop, where to dine, how to play. And I encourage people to check it out. It's a really dynamic market, and there's lots of creativity here. And I am on LinkedIn, so all of my friends and most of my friends from my retail council days reach out to me. I have a number of members who are former members at RCC who own properties here, and we connect on a regular basis. And I would be happy anytime anyone wants to come. I'd be happy to do a personal tour and show people some of the highlights. Oh, fantastic! Well, thank you for sharing some of them on the Voice of Retail. It's been a great lesson, not just locally, but again. That can transfer into both small business around the country and national businesses. So, Andrew, thanks for your wisdom and your experience, and again, thanks for being on the Voice of Retail podcast. Anytime, Michael. Thank you so much, and thanks for this great platform. It's great information to share, and I love to listen. Well, thanks to Kevin and Andrew for being my guests and for Astound Commerce on their support of this episode. If you like this podcast, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform. Rate and review, and be sure and recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of Emmy LeBlanc & Company, Inc. You can learn more about me on www.emmyleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.